Welcome back. Before we get started with turn 8 of my solitaire playthrough of Labyrinth, I thought I should, as usual, mention a couple of corrections that I've made to the board since the last video. Watching the video, I noticed that I was getting quite a bit carried away in Iraq during that last turn, at least, if not two. Conducting a war of ideas, dramatic hand shadow, in an effort to improve governance and shift alliance there, but you can't do that in an adversary country. So, it's too late to fix, but we're going to try to work things out and chalk the rest up to chaos and unpredictability by applying not all but most of those successes to neighboring countries Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. So Pakistan was at fair neutral, it's now at good ally, and we've improved the governance of Saudi Arabia from poor to fair. It remains a neutral country. I've returned an aid marker to Iraq, the one that we received as a result of Saddam captured. All of these changes mean that the good resources marker has dropped one from 9 to 8, but it's still looking pretty good as we enter the first turn of the second deck. I also, much like this Cadre recruit pile over here, have decided to rotate the governance markers 90 degrees when they're on the adversary box of the alliance tracks to help me remember that I can't conduct a war of ideas in those countries until those markers move. I'm also going to try not to get these two dice confused. With that, let's get started. Let's take a look at the US hand. I haven't done so yet. I've only ordered it by type, and you see that we only get one US associated event, and that's sanctions. US Treasury blocks suspect Muslim charities. Play if Patriot Act in effect, which it's not, but if it were, it would drop jihadist funding by 2. They're already at 1. Then we get a couple of unassociated events. Kurdistan comes up again. If US play, place 1 aid in Iraq. Tora Bora. US traps Al-Qaeda fighters but not leaders. Play if at least 2 cells in a regime change country. There are no regime change countries at the moment, but it would allow you to remove the 2 cells, roll prestige, draw a card. And then we get all of these jihadist associated events. So it's a pretty tough hand this turn. We get this, play if troops in Iraq, place Sadr there. It is an active cell but cannot travel or be disrupted. If the cell is removed, remove the marker from the game. Pardon the poor pronunciation again. We get this again. I think last time it was played for the ops and the event was not triggered. But it would be another one that would trigger if there's a regime change country that has a cell. Drop 1 prestige, and it blocks an event. This one, this is one that would not get triggered. Play if first card of jihadist action phase and a cell is available. Since we would only be playing this during our US action phase, we can use that for the ops without worrying about the event being triggered. We get Wahhabism again. I think last time I discarded this. Add the number on Saudi Arabia's governance to funding, or set to 9 if Islamist rule. At the moment, Saudi Arabia is at 2, fair. And I think I may have discarded this one before as well. I'm getting the plays mixed up. I've definitely discarded this one. So we have a few that we would like to discard. Unfortunately, we can only do so with one as a result of the end of our action phase. Maybe there'll be other events that would allow us to do so. Jihadist videos. Select 3 countries without cells, test them, recruit 1 in each, ignoring funding, place Cadre in each country that does not receive a cell. Ouch. This is pretty bad as well. Play if a non-Islamist rule country has a cell. That is very likely. Replace the cell with any 2 available plot markers. We see how this affected Spain last turn, and we had to spend 3 ops to alert Spain of one of those 2 plots. The other one helped the jihadist player in their funding. The jihadist AI started out strong. They played XKGB for the event. distrust hinders US-Russian work to shift the alliance of Central Asia from neutral to adversary. They followed that with Martyrdom Operation, replacing a cell in the Philippines with 2 random plot markers. For the US action phase, we're going to play this card to first use the ops to place this troop cube back on the troop track. That will make it so that the event is not triggered. Then we'll play this also for the ops. The event will not be triggered. There are no regime change countries with cells. There are no regime change countries, period. And we'll use that to remove this Cadre recruit marker from Somalia. The jihadist AI played Zawahiri for the ops to unsuccessfully conduct a minor jihad in Pakistan. That cell was removed and placed back on the funding track. Then they followed that up with this 3 ops card. The event wasn't triggered, but they used it to unsuccessfully recruit in Afghanistan. During the US action phase, we played these 2 cards for the ops to first conduct a war of ideas in Saudi Arabia. We gained an aid marker. We tried it again, this time to bring governance to good. We have these 1 ops cards that we'd like to use to continue a war of ideas in Saudi Arabia in the future turns. We rolled a 4, even with the 2 penalty for GWOT relations. Because we're at very high on the prestige track, we were able to successfully improve governance there to good, bringing our good resources to 11. The jihadists played this card without triggering the event to unsuccessfully recruit into Afghanistan, a besieged regime. They only had 1 cell available to them as they're at tight funding on the track. They followed that with Gaza withdrawal, Palestinians stripped freed of occupation, to place a cell in Israel, and also followed that with a travel action, traveling a cell from Afghanistan to Pakistan. During the US action phase, we played this jihadist-associated event, not triggering the event, before the ops to conduct a war of ideas in Saudi Arabia, successfully shifting alignment to ally. We then followed that with this card for the ops to conduct a war of ideas in France to try to switch posture from soft to hard. However, that was unsuccessful. For their final card, the jihadists played Bin Laden to drop US prestige by 2. They then used the ops to conduct an unsuccessful minor jihad in Pakistan. For our final action phase, we've kept the worst for last, but we'll be using these 2 3-op cards to block these 2 terror plots in the Philippines. But in return, jihadist funding will go up by 1. They're still in the tight area of the funding track, and they get to replace any cell on the board with 2 available plot markers. And that country will be Germany. Replace the cell, select 2 plot markers, and we'll resolve the plots. This final US card is discarded. As a result of the plots, jihadist funding is now back up to 9 ample funding. Germany stays at soft. And they tested France and Spain as well, which also stay at soft. Entering turn 9, good resources is at 11. The world postures at soft 3 while the US remains hard. US prestige has dropped to high. Jihadist funding is at 8. We both received 9 cards this turn, getting ready to start the first jihadist action phase. But before we do, let's take a look at the US hand. We got 2 US associated events, 2 unassociated events, and another fistful of jihadist associated events. Let's take a look at these. Let's roll attack thwarted. This would allow us to remove a plot from an ally or good country, draw a card, and select the posture of 1 non-US country, which is great because we're currently getting a 3 penalty because world is at 3 soft. Then we have this. This would allow us to improve the governance of Turkey by 1 level, select France's posture, and decrease funding by 2. Another good card for the event. We've got this, which would currently allow us to drop funding by another 2. And this, which would allow us to test a Shumax country and remove a cell from there or Iran. Homegrown, this places a cell in the UK. Bhutto shot. Bhutto's shot's been played. This needs to be removed. Okay, forget that. We have actually 3 US associated events. This would allow us to remove any cells in Israel, Jordan, or Lebanon. There is one in Israel at the moment. Loose nuke. Currently the event wouldn't be triggered. But if it were to be triggered, we would roll, the jihadist AI would roll as if one operation there, success, on a success, they would gain the WMD terror plot marker to place in the available plots. That's really bad. We want to play this early. We get this, play if a country tested or improved to fair or good, this or last action phase. Worsen its governance 1 level toward poor. This is a good one to play early before we do any improving or testing of governance. And we get this. Shift Pakistan 1 box toward adversary and place a cell there. This is probably one that I would discard at the end. During the jihadist action phase, they played this for the ops to travel a cell from Israel to Jordan, then followed that with his 2 ops to conduct a minor jihad there unsuccessfully. During the US action phase, we played Mossad and Shin Bet, Israeli security services, to remove this cell from Jordan. Then we played this 2 ops card to disrupt this cell in China. The jihadists played Al Jazeera for the ops to unsuccessfully recruit in Jordan. Really bad rules for them in general this turn. They followed that with this card to plot unsuccessfully in the Philippines. During the US action phase, we'll first play this for the ops to disrupt in China, and we will play this to roll for posture of China. They're now at hard. That brings the GWOT relations to soft 2. I just realized that the jihadists couldn't perform a plot operation in the Philippines last turn because there were no cells or cadres there, so instead we're going to perform a double radicalization for their first card using 2 ops cards. The first ops is used to automatically place a cell in a random country. So we'll choose 2. We'll roll for 2. First one is 1, 3, Schengen, 4, France, and the second one is 1, 5, also Schengen, Scandinavia. With their second ops, they automatically travel 1 cell. A cell traveled from Scandinavia to Russia and from Serbia to the Caucasus. Russia starts out soft, Caucasus at hard. We're at world soft 2. They followed that up with this card for the ops to unsuccessfully plot in Russia. During the US action phase, we'll play hijab, peaceful expression of Muslim rights, to improve the governance of Turkey from poor to fair. Select France's posture and switch it to hard, bringing WOT to soft 1, and then we'll reduce jihadist funding from 8 to 6, and then we'll hit funding again with this card, dropping it down to 4 at the low end of the moderate section of the funding track. During the jihadist action phase, they played this card to recruit a cell to France. We followed that with Kosovo. US supports Muslim minority to raise US prestige while you play the event. It's an unassociated event. Serbia is already set to opposite the US posture at soft. Then they spent the ops to attempt another recruit unsuccessfully into France. During the US action phase, we played this 2-ops card to remove the active cell from Russia, and homegrown to remove the Cadre from Jordan. That triggered the event Jihad Roots Among Britons. Place a cell in the United Kingdom. The Jihadist AI played his last card to unsuccessfully plot in France, and we will be discarding Kashmir. We're going to try to stick another turn in here. So here's a look at the victory track. I think this is turn 10. Islamist resources is at 0, good resources at 11. There are equal number of poor/Islamist countries and fair or good governance countries. Both markers are at 7. Jihadist funding is dropped again to tight. It's at 3. And that means that we draw 9 cards, but they only draw 7. Here's a look at the US hand, and it looks pretty good this turn. We get 5 US associated events, 1 unassociated event, and 3 Jihadist associated events. We get Al-Azhar. This would drop funding, wiretapping, a lingering event that would only trigger if there are cadre cells or plots in the US, UK, or Canada. In that case, we'd remove them all, place no cadres, draw a card. Ambar Awakening. If there were troops in Iraq or Syria, this would get triggered, and we'd gain an aid in either country and a prestige. We get safer now again. This would, we'd have to roll US posture, but we'd gain 3 prestige and be able to select 1 non-US country's posture. Currently we're at hard, and the world is at soft 1. Indo-Pakistani talks. This would trigger at the moment, as it is. We have good governance in Pakistan. This would allow us to change the posture of India, but it's looking good as is. I mean, Pakistan's already an ally, India's already at hard. I may just use this for the ops. We get this unassociated event, which would trigger if there were troops in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, or Jordan, and this would allow us to gain 3 prestige. This card would be removed. Then, for the Jihadist associated events, we have IEDs, which wouldn't trigger at the moment. There are no regime change countries. Kazakh strain, which would not trigger either. And Quagmire. We would play the event if our prestige is at medium or low, and a regime change country, which there are none of, has a cell, so this would be actually a good one to go ahead and play. None of these Jihadist associated events are looking very dangerous at the moment, but I'd like to get them out of my hand sooner than later. The more I look at this victory track, the less sure I am about playing the game correctly. I must have missed a radicalization or 2. But anyway, it's a learning game. We're going to continue as is. It's the same way with all my playthroughs. I hope to visit the game again. But it seems strange that good resources is already all the way up at 11. I feel like we should be struggling to keep it above 6 and fighting to push it to 9. We are still in the early part of the second deck, so over the next few turns, this may drop dramatically. The Jihadists play this 3-ops card and fail their recruit attempt in the United Kingdom. Then they play Martyrdom Operation for the event to replace the cell here in Caucasus with 2 plot markers. We'll play this 3-ops card to alert Caucasus of one of these plots, and this 2-ops card to try to shift the alignment of Turkey by 1 to ally. We get a +1 on the die roll modifier. We roll a 3, and gain an aid. The jihadist AI plays madrasas, Muslim schools teach extremism, to use the ops on this card and the second card to conduct a recruit action. And we've chosen Libya randomly. It doesn't need to have a cell or a cadre in this case. We roll 2, and they gain a cell in Libya. We then play wiretapping, aggressive US domestic surveillance, to remove the cell that's in the United Kingdom and draw a card. We get Lebanon War. And we'll play this 1-op card to disrupt a cell in France. The jihadists play this card for the ops to attempt a recruit in Libya and failed. They also failed in their attempt to plot in France. We'll play this for the ops to to deploy 2 troop cubes from the Philippines to Syria. And then we'll follow that with this event to gain 3 prestige. It goes up to 12. This card is removed. For the final jihadist card, they play this for the ops to attempt a plot in France, and they fail. And for the final US action phase, we're gonna play 3 of our 4 remaining cards. The last one will be discarded. We play Anbar Awakening, which only really just adds aid to Syria. The other event, we would gain a prestige. We're already at 12, and it would block Al-Anbar, which has already been played. We then play Al-Azhar for the event in Egypt to test it. Begins a poor neutral country. We would drop funding by 4. It's at 3, so we drop it down to a 1. Then we spend 3 ops over in Indonesia and Malaysia to conduct a war of ideas, to improve governance to fair. We get a +1 for being adjacent to a good ally, a +2 for being very high on the prestige track, and a -1 for GWOT relations. And we roll a 6 and succeed. Now we resolve plots, and I really hope I didn't forget to do this at the end of the previous US action phase. It's a non-Muslim country, so jihadist funding will go up by 2. And we would roll posture. We roll a 5, it stays at hard. And we remove the plot. End of turn, jihadist funding goes back down to 2. Prestige stays at 12. And that's it.